Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Sideline Fantasy Show. That we are going to be covering Week 10 of the fantasy football season, and I am here with my co-host, as usual, the 3-6, Jordan Charles. How are we doing today?
Maybe 3-6, but you take a loss, I take a W, and we're a game. I'm a game behind you, so
That won't happen. you
I'm
know,
feeling okay right now. Obviously, a game out of the playoffs with the tiebreaker in hand, so I can't really complain.
yeah. I mean, I'd feel pretty okay being 11th in the league too. I mean, that's not a bad spot to be.
Yeah,
Can't
especially when
complain.
you're fourth in scoring. Yeah, it's a pretty good spot to be
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the guy that's last in scoring or second to last in scoring is in the playoffs. Gotta love fantasy. But yeah, let's get started. So this week was the trade deadline. All trades, I mean, technically, by the time you listen to this, the trade deadline might still be going on for a little bit. But from real time, we got about 2 hours, 3 hours until the trade deadline is officially past us. And there was a lot of movement this week. So we might not. We might really kind of brush through the matchups and focus a little bit more on the trades. We're not going to. We might spend literally a minute or two on each matchup because there was so many trades this week, and this is the last week teams could have shaken up their rosters and what they wanted to do. So the first trade that went down this week, and there was a lot, was between Kyle and Chad, and that involved Chad trading T.Y. Hilton, James White, and Curtis Samuel, and he got Greg Zerline, Robert Woods, and Austin Eckler. Now, Eckler's been moving around in the market the last few weeks, and despite Melvin Gordon being back for what, a month now, he's still running back three. What did you think about this trade overall?
I felt like it kind of gave. It was more so kind of a very balanced deal. I just feel like Chad kind of didn't push Ty away because he was out, but essentially, he got back an Eckler. He got back Eckler, obviously, for James White in that sense. Those guys are kind of the same type of player, where they're more involved in the passing game and the running game, but still gonna put up points for you. Getting a kicker, I guess, isn't awful, especially when it's Zerline. But the trade was very balanced to me. I don't feel like anybody really lost or necessarily won that deal, as the players that got moved were kind of the same type of players.
Yeah, I mean when you look at it, you have like a one receiver in Ty, and then you have a honestly, I mean, it's hard to say a one running back, but really, I mean, ever since Melvin's been gone, he's been putting up decent numbers. I mean, he's put up, let's see, 31, 53 points in the last 4 weeks. I mean, that's not bad. It's about 13 a week. So Eckler's still doing his thing. Obviously he's more of a receiver than a running back, but Robert Woods has not had the season many have expected, but he's still been a decent wide receiver two to this point. Fringe flex. I think he's only had 3 weeks above double digits or something like that. So overall disappointing, but not a bad little pickup there. James White, me and you both kind of are on the same page with the whole New England running back thing. It is tough to go with them, but if you look at James White's player card, I mean, that is a very good flex option week in and week out. I mean, 10, 10, 10, 10, 9, 9.5, 10, 15. I mean, that's very consistent. So heading into the playoffs with something like that is something that could be needed there. And then Curtis Samuel, who's been kind of on a few teams moving around here and there, is another kind of decent flex option as well. Moving on to the next trade. This involved Tori and Kyle. Kyle was very involved in trades this week. He really wanted to round out his roster for looking ahead of the playoffs. There was a lot of people that thought that Tori won both of her trades this week. And the first one was with Kyle, which had Adrian Peterson and Tyler Lockett going to Kyle. Obviously, Lockett's going to be the big name involved in this deal for Curtis Samuel, Sony Michelle, and Calvin Ridley. I think Tori got a lot of good. I don't even want to say depth. I think she got some really good, solid players there, and she gave up Adrian Peterson, whose time could be diminished, and also, obviously the big deal in this one, the big name guy was Tyler Lockett, who's had an absolutely incredible season to this point. So Kyle was looking at it more so as getting one more big star and trading away some of his solid players. What did you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, both individuals got players that they can use, but I do feel like Tori got the better end of things, as she gets another running back she can deploy out there. Obviously, her running backs haven't been fantastic so far this year. They're not bad by any means, but now she kind of gets another player you can put in regards to a matchup, or you can kind of throw a third running back in the flex now and kind of not worry about that at that point. And you replace Tyler Lockett with Calvin Ridley, who now that Matt Ryan is back, can see more volume in regards to passing. Also, Sanu being gone helps as well. But I do feel like there are going to be weeks where Ridley and Lockett kind of balance out each other. Obviously, so far, Lockett's been the better player, but it's more so a product of his quarterback, I feel, being
Right.
Russell Wilson and playing so well, and the fact that he gets a lot of the volume as well. So I do feel like obviously Tori did win strictly off of the fact that she was able to pull another starting running back in this deal and kind of not lose much of the receiver position.
Yeah, I mean Calvin Ridley, and I liked him a lot heading into the year. I had him on my team. This is the third team he's been on so far. He's wide receiver number 24. I mean that when you break it down, 12 teams in the league, that's right there as a fringe wide receiver number 2 week in and week out. He's had 3 down weeks, but the rest of his weeks have been very, very viable. And with a 1-7 Falcons team, and playing in a dome and all this and that, they play New Orleans dome game. They're at home against Tampa. They're at home against New Orleans. They're home against Carolina. That's a lot. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot, and I don't see any reason why Ridley can't keep up that pace. And then also getting Sony Michel, who is on a bye this week. And again, it is a New England running back, but again, late in the year, he has proven to be their goal line back. And they're going to be going against some pretty tough defenses in Philly, Dallas, Houston, that I think they're going to be trying to pound the rock as much as possible. And you're going to have weeks where Michelle, like last time they played the Ravens just last week, 5 carries because they were down early. But if the Patriots stay ahead, they stay up, or they stay close, Michelle is going to get those carries. So it's an interesting trade. I could see it working out for both teams, but Tori did get some value there, which I feel like she needed. Next trade up also involved Tori. Don't have to spend as much time on this one, but Kenyon Drake and Dede Westbrook for Royce Freeman. Kenyon Drake had a fantastic debut for the Cardinals. David Johnson looks to be back. I don't necessarily think that means Drake role is going to be gone though, because I think they're trying to, keep David Johnson fresh and healthy. Dede Westbrook is another guy that comes in again, kind of a down season to this point so far, but the last few times he's been out there on the field has looked pretty good. I mean, he's missed the last couple weeks, which hurts his ranking a little bit. And Royce Freeman has been a really solid backup running back this year. Obviously, not you can't be confident enough him to start in and week out, but he's had some games where he's put up productive numbers. What did you think about this trade? Not a big one, but a little 30-second synopsis on what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, both people got players that they can use for sure. Tori gets Dede Westbrook, who can be solid at times. Obviously, he's a hit or miss guy. And Kenyon Drake, if David Johnson's injuries do kind of hamper him this year, they have somebody they can fall back on in what seems to be a somewhat lost season. So you don't really want to have to run David Johnson into the ground with, you know, just playing him if he's not ready to play.
Yeah,
I mean,
I could see them limiting his role for sure.
Drake Den can play for sure. I mean, he's somebody going into a year where he's a free agent next year, so they don't really care how much they use him. If they don't plan on resigning him next year anyways, I mean, you just have to kind of use him as a stopgap for David Johnson's health, and that could work out fantasy-wise for Tori. And obviously for Peter, you get Royce Freeman. He's been solid. Obviously, it's kind of tough to pick and choose those running backs in Denver week in and week out because we've seen weeks where Lindsey's the guy. We've seen weeks where Freeman's the guy. So kind of getting into that situation there is tough. Obviously, you can see later on that some people got themselves out of that situation, but I wouldn't say it's a bad deal for either one of them.
No, I don't think so at all. Kind of trying to stockpile their teams, make them a little bit better. You got to give Peter credit. He's hanging in there as much as he can. He's doing what he needs to do to try to stay in there and win. He's fighting tooth and nail. Not much time on this one. Peterson for Robbie Anderson was a 1-for-1 swap between me and Kyle. He knows I like my boy Adrian Peterson. You also had another 1-for-1 swap in Jared Cook for Alshon Jeffrey, which I found very interesting. Alshon Jeffrey right now is wide receiver number 36. Again, hasn't been great, but he's also missed a couple weeks due to injury. Pretty good flex option, obviously, kind of touchdown dependent, and was traded for Jared Cook for a team that needed a tight end. Obviously, I think we'd all agree that Alshon Jeffrey is going to put up more points throughout the year, but maybe that was more out of a positional need than anything. Next trade that went through is going to be the one that just went through last night. Could be our last big trade of the year. And that was you going after Leonard Fournette, and you got Ty Johnson in that one as well for Phillip Lindsay and DJ Shark. DJ Shark was the guy you were really, really high on. Produced massively in the first 5 weeks of the year. Has kind of calmed down a little bit since. Still top 10 receiver. You traded Phillip Lindsay, who you got in the Zeke deal. He's still running back 11, and he hasn't been bad for you. I don't remember how long you've had him for, but at least 3-4 weeks to this point, and he's been about what you'd expect. 15, 10. He had that off week of 4 and then 14. And you got Leonard Fournette, which I would say is a little bit more of a star piece. You got a number 5 running back in fantasy, and he's had double digits every week outside of last week and week 1 when he still put up 9.5, which isn't bad. Everybody's on a bye this week, though, so none of it's going to make a factor this week, but tell me why you wanted Leonard Fournette.
Like you said there, though, he's another star to kind of play on my team. Obviously, I have to now find ways to fill that second wide receiver role, but there's also time to make another deal or whatnot. But I just felt like at that point, after trading Zeke, obviously trading somebody away like that, like Zeke, and seeing him pick up his numbers after that, it sucks to a degree. But to now be able to then move a piece from that deal and then somebody else that I picked up off waivers, in week 2 or whatever.
Right.
Although Chark has been playing, he's been playing solid, but like you said, kind of fallen off. I don't know if I can rely on the transition of quarterbacks from Minshew, who loves Chark, to Foles, who we don't know how he's going to play with Chark because he's only been with Chark for a week. So that kind of scared me away from him a little bit. So obviously getting Fournette, a solid running back to kind of pair with McCaffrey, I still get the upside of Damian Williams if he kind of picks it up this year again. So, I feel like I didn't really give up a whole lot. Obviously, on paper, it looks like I did. But also getting back Ty Johnson, who now could be a very valuable factor in that Lions offense if Matt Stafford's going to miss more than just this week. Because if they're going to be down in games, the quarterback they can't really keep them in games, they're going to have to pass the ball a lot. He's kind of the guy who's going to be able to get that done. So I felt like it was a pretty solid deal for me and also Dave.
Yeah, it could be one of those trades that ends up working for both. Dave might have needed a little bit more people on his team that didn't have a lightning bolt on his team, and he got a couple guys in return. So obviously, it was basically, I don't want to say it's a 2-for-1. I'm not saying Ty Johnson might not be valuable for you down the road, but really it was you trading up for a star and trading away a little bit of 2 middle pieces in Lindsay and Shark. Dave's looking at it as he got a top 10 running back and a top 10 receiver, and you're looking at it as I got a solidified top 5 running back, which the difference between the 11th running back and the 5th running back could be significant. So we'll see on that one. But we'll see if any more trades go down in the length of us doing the show. I don't know if that's going to happen, but there were a lot of trades this week. Not huge ones, a lot of 1-for-1s trying to shore up teams' rosters before we head into that playoff stretch. But now we are going to go to the matchups. The first matchup is going to be me versus Peter. I got off to a good start on the Thursday night games with Josh Jacobs getting 17.5 points. And Peter is doing his best to stay alive. He's got Kamara this week, Montgomery, Sanders, Tate. He's got Jalen Samuels in there. He's doing whatever he can to stay alive. Projections have him at 106. I'm projected for 126, which I believe is the highest in the league. But we'll see. I've had that multiple times this year, and my team has struggled. What do you see in this matchup, and how do you see it panning out? You with me, Krim?
Yeah, sorry about that. I do see a lot of Qs on one side of the field, obviously, with Le'Veon and Lamar. They've obviously shored up that they're going to play, so there's no worry there. But if there wasn't a report saying that we're going to play, I'd be kind of concerned for you. More so because your quarterback, Matt Ryan, obviously fine. But your running backs, you'd have to kind of throw in Breda or Frank Gore, who's kind of lost time to Singletary now. But I just see Peter in a kind of a must-win game with some big pieces there. Like, you've got Kamara coming back, obviously. Who's to say how well he fares out with the time off and whatnot. Obviously, he's a stud, so I don't see this game going too poorly for him. Montgomery in a good spot, especially if the Bears get up on this, Lions team with no Stafford. That could be big for them. And he's got some, receivers that kind of, I wouldn't say popped up out of nowhere, but Sanders kind of fell off the face of the earth in Denver after the first couple of weeks, and then now is in San Fran and kind of rejuvenated. So that's kind of a scary matchup there against Seattle in a big divisional game. And Golden Tate has been pretty good so far, especially with the volume he's getting because you have no Shepard to take away from
the
passing game. You played some couple games, I believe, with no Barkley. So, again, you're kind of the number one option there in that offense. So, all in all, I feel like he's got a pretty solid lineup going forward. But at the same time, it's hard to kind of counterbalance that 17-point game by Jacobs on Thursday. Le'Veon playing up against a porous Giants defense. Lamar playing up against one of the worst Ds in the league in Cincinnati. And then you obviously have Julio and Michael Thomas sitting there and the same. They're going to go head to head, but yeah. So like a game like that's pretty big too. So obviously the projections show who they will have favored to win. I don't really disagree with them at all.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I say this, and I feel like I'm wrong every time I say I think a game's going to be a shootout this year. I think it hasn't been, but New Orleans Atlanta should be a pretty highish scoring game. I know New Orleans defense is pretty solid this year, so but Atlanta's defense is horrible. So New Orleans could put up 40 plus, and I hope Michael Thomas is involved in that, which makes Julio hopefully more involved with a lot more throwing. But we'll see. I do like my roster a lot moving forward. I do think that I am in a good position to make the playoffs, but winning this week will make me feel a lot better. So I really would like to win this week to kind of solidify my position because if I lose, as people pointed out, it could get really, really hairy in my division. So I'm off to a good start, and hopefully I can keep it rolling moving forward. Next matchup is going to be Chad versus Jay. And again, like I said, I do look at a lot of matchups week to week and week in and week out. This one is going to be I would argue that every matchup's important because every team's still in the playoffs. I would argue my matchup has the least kind of playoff indications. Every other one you're looking at is just, all of them are just in the thick of things. And C. Fells versus Jay here. So Chad versus Jay. Jay's actually projected to win by 4. He's won last week to get to 4-5, still in that playoff position. Chad's 6-3 coming off a loss. Eckler got 12 for him, which wasn't bad. Henry got 11 for Jay. Very close. Both have had one guy go. Chad's got a lot of buys this week. Jay found him at the right time. Deshaun, DeAndre Hopkins, and Ertz all on a buy. Is Jay going to be able to sneak one out here against Chad? Stafford's in there. Hopefully he catches that in time.
Hopefully he does not catch that in time because I could for sure use Jay to take a loss here. Obviously, I'm riding on myself to end the year, and I need a little bit of help, but I just don't like necessarily his matchups more so. I mean, if you don't take out Stafford, then you're screwed there. If you do take out Stafford, you have Jared Goff against Pittsburgh, which isn't necessarily going to be an easy game to strive in. He's got Diggs against Dallas. He's got Metcalf against San Fran, a very tough defense. You've got Devontae Parker against the Colts, who knows what they're going to get from that Dolphins, offense. I know Parker's kind of the only guy who is there in regards to receiver, and Wilson as well, but he hasn't been a big factor so far this year. But David Johnson, too, like how healthy is he? How much run will he see? If they get up early, are they going to kind of take their foot off the gas with Johnson and kind of let Kenyon Drake take over? There's a lot of question marks here for his team. And on Chad's side of things, I just see, guys who need to get it going, and they could obviously do it this week. The matchups aren't pretty. I mean, you have Garoppolo, who Chad kind of wanted to move because he doesn't want to cheer for him in this league and then cheer against him in 2 other leagues. But he's in a good spot right now for him. Obviously, Dalvin against Dallas is tough. I wouldn't say it's a for sure thing. And then his receivers are kind of the biggest thing here. If Chad's receivers and Woods and Beckham can get it going and show us what they've had shown us in previous years, he can very well blow that projection out of the water. But just a matter of, can they actually do it?
Yeah, and in their division right now, this is one of those games where Chad can afford to lose and be all right. But it's one of those also with how many bye weeks he has. Winning this game would be really good for him. It'd be really big for him if he can come out of here with all of his three major players on a bye and come out with a win. This is the week for Jay to step up and get that win, get to 5-5, and keep somehow trugging away at that third playoff spot. Although Jay's the second lowest scoring team in the league, you can see his roster rounding out a little bit better. Fuller's on a bye, Carlos Hyde and Jeffrey are on a bye. So maybe Devontae Parker usually wouldn't get the start that he's getting today, but his team is rounding out all right, especially if Devin Singletary's role rises. Stephon Diggs is finally starting to come together a little bit. He's wide receiver 15 in fantasy right now. Prior to last week against Kansas City, he had games of 143, 143, and 167. So he's coming along very, very strong for Jay. This is the week to kind of stun Chad and get one out. I don't know if it's going to happen. If I had to guess, I do think Chad will still pull this one out. I think that Sunday night game, Dallas against Minnesota, Diggs in one matchup, Cook in the other, that's going to be an important one. But we will see. And hopefully Jake, or unless he's in your division, hopefully he doesn't catch that Matthew Stafford is going to be out this week. Next matchup is going to be Tyler versus Trey. You got a 4-5 team in Tyler who's lost 2 in a row. He's 4-5, and he has lost his playoff position in the division to Rob, fighting to stay alive now at 4-5, going against your brother who was able to pull out a victory last week, his first in a while, and he's 3-6. He's not out of it. He's the same record as you. He's projected to beat Tyler by 3. No one has gone yet in either matchup. Honestly, this is kind of looking at it, kind of a toss-up here. I think the big ones to look at are Marlon Mack against that brutal Miami team. Drew Brees against Atlanta, it's a matter of does he drop 20 or does he drop 35? Because he's going to drop at least 20. But does he extend that to 35? And Mahomes coming back against a pretty darn good Tennessee defense. I think those are the key factors in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously Mahomes' health is the biggest, question mark here for Trey. He's relying on a lot of Chiefs players and Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill, so he's going to have to kind of hope that those guys get it going. Obviously, bit by sort of a bug with Dorsett being out on a bye and Duke Johnson after his big week being out on a bye. But honestly, I know Mahomes is back, and if I'm him, I consider looking at Kyler Murray against that Tampa Bay defense. I mean, Mahomes is your guy, and you drafted him high enough to where you would like to play him every week, but matchup wise, just Kyler is pretty stout against that. Tampa Bay D. It's going to be.
Kyler's had a damn good year.
Yeah, he's been good. I mean, he's definitely underrated for sure. I feel fantasy wise. So I mean, if you make a change there, obviously receiver wise, he might be better off changing Landry to Scantling, but obviously, that's something he had to look into. I do think that Tyler's side of things look better with Brees against Atlanta. Mac against Miami. Amendola is kind of shaky now because there's no Stafford. Marquise Brown's, questionable. So if he doesn't kind of play, he's expected to play. So, I mean, it depends there. I mean, he's in a good spot. Same with Olsen. Same with Allen Robinson against that Detroit defense. It is a toss-up for sure. It obviously depends on that quarterback play, but making the right decisions, too, in regards to your lineup will kind of dictate, obviously Tyler doesn't have a choice, but Trey kind of can change things with, just changing things around.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. I think this is definitely one of the ones to watch out for this week. Obviously, Tyler is tied for the third playoff spot, or not really tied, but same record. And Trey is a game out. I mean, everyone's still in it. Big game. And when we're in the last 4 weeks. I mean, we have 4 games left. So, yeah, a game out doesn't sound like a lot, but a game out with 4 compared to a game out with 3 is a big difference. I mean, that's tough, especially if you don't have tiebreakers. So, both teams might look at this as a must-win. Who knows? Next matchup is going to be Rob versus Dave. Dave has already had a bulk of his players play, being a Chargers guy. Phillip Rivers only got him 10, which was not that great. Melvin Gordon got him 19, and Keenan Allen got him 12. He said he was satisfied with 42 from the 3 of them. I don't know if I would be, and I don't think it's going to be enough for him to get the win. In fact, I do think Rob, who's won 2 in a row, started off 2-0, lost 5 in a row, to go to 2-5, has now won 2 in a row, and I think he's on the verge for 3 in a row. And Rob, looking at that roster, could really be one of those sneaky teams if he gets into the playoffs. He's got James Conner on his bench. He's going to roll with Kareem Hunt this week, Mike Evans, Smith Schuster, Derrick Henry. It's not, by no means is it Dana's team, but watch out for Rob's team if he gets in, and he might continue that winning streak this week, because who on Dave's team is going to pick up the slack from the performances of the Chargers? Who's going to go out there and put up a crazy big performance? I just don't see it. Dave might just barely get to 100, and I don't know if that's going to be enough. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, again, on Thursday, Dave said he would take it. He liked what he saw from all of his guys, but personally, I just feel like, yeah, isn't a bad place to be in, but you need those guys to push you over the edge. And Ronald Jones and against Arizona could give you a good game. I mean, the metrics are there saying that he can for sure. Marvin Jones loses a lot of his productivity with no Stafford, so again, that can be very tough to kind of gauge. Jonnu Smith, Kansas City, can't really knock that, but at the same time, that could give you 5 points, and that's all you get if he doesn't score a touchdown. So that team is very run-heavy anyways. And Pascal against Miami, you kind of have to roll with, because Dave doesn't really have any other options with guys on buys and Kittle being doubtful. So Dave could have – it's tough there too. Jameis Winston is a very viable fantasy quarterback just because his team is so bad that he has to throw the ball constantly. So having someone like Jameis in there could have been the difference, because Rivers gave you 10. Obviously, you don't expect him to give you 10 against Oakland because Oakland's numbers look bad. But whenever you see them play on the field in a game that they would like to win, they turn up. Obviously, they beat the Chargers. And those guys seem to kind of switch gears when it comes to games like that. So riding out 3 guys in that game is tough. And like you said always, and I've kind of followed the same thing, running with a team that you have their quarterback, their receiver, and running back, playing all 3 isn't really great, because you know that if the running back goes off, the quarterback and receiver aren't passing the ball. If the quarterback and receiver go off, the running back's not getting involved because they're down. So you're kind of trying to balance things out, but in a very hard way. So, I mean, not to say, obviously, you could say it now because the game is over, but Jameis could have been a better option for you in regards to playing at quarterback. Could have gave you 10 more points, and 10 more points from your queue is big. Like, that's a pretty big gap between, 10.2 and 22 points. Like, that's pretty massive.
I mean, Jameis is going to put up more than 10 points against Arizona. He is, and I know Dave's a Charger fan. I get it, and I know he said, and I know it's easy to look back on it in retrospect and say, yeah, you should have started Jameis. But I thought that before the game even started. I mean, look at Phillip Rivers' last 3 games, in terms of his fantasy. I mean, he's got 10, 11, and 10. That's not good. I mean, that's just not good. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know it was against pretty decent defenses in Chicago and Green Bay, and he played against Oakland this week. But Jameis Winston, they're just going to chuck the ball 50 times up. They're going against that horrible Arizona Cardinals secondary, and it's pretty bad. I don't know. I mean, I think Dave needed at least 50 to 55 with his Charger boys, but we'll see. Next matchup's going to be Ryden Rodgers against you. Is this a must-win for both teams?
More than likely, yes. But again, we've seen must-wins turn into games that mean nothing because a whole division loses. But there are only 2 weeks following this, or 3 weeks following this week, so time's ticking. So I'd say yes. Every week kind of is a must-win for those teams who aren't in a playoff spot right now. And even if you are, you can just as easily fall out just because of the things are so close.
Yeah, I mean, Tori's projected for 101. You're projected for 99. Mike, you were projected for a little bit more, but Mike Williams put up 6.5 points. Obviously, you were expecting a little bit more from him there. Tori's going to be heavy Green Bay this week with the Green Bay defense. the Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay kicker, and you're a Panthers fan, so you have doubly reason to root for your Panthers here today. And this is going to be a fun one. Again, when I always say I look up a couple matchups in the league each week, how can this not be one of the top two biggest matchups? 2, 3, and 6 teams. Both teams, I think, need a win to stay in the playoff picture, and it's projected to be extremely, extremely close. And neither team has super huge buys. I mean, yes, you just acquired Fournette, granted, but you would have had buys regardless. But I think this is going to be a fun one, and I want to kind of keep a lookout for throughout the day. I would argue I think Travis Kelce going against that Tennessee defense is a big one. I think people are still kind of waiting for that 20-25 point Travis Kelce game that really hasn't happened much this year. He's been extremely consistent, but he hasn't had that 100-yard, 2-touchdown game yet. And on your side, Damian Williams against Tennessee. I mean, could we look at both Chiefs players and go, they're the big factor here? He broke out against Minnesota last week. You're going to hope he kind of keeps that train rolling here. So it's going to be an interesting one. Both teams are needing a win here. I mean, 3 and 6. You need it. She needs it. So it'll be a fun one. I'm sure you're going to be stressing out on it.
Yeah, especially if you look at obviously big factors that you brought up, the Chiefs players, Kelce and Williams. She also has McCoy. So if the game script goes one way or another, one of us could be very upset because the running back that we have doesn't get touches, or, one of them fumbles and the other one picks up the carry for the rest of the game, like we saw last time with Damian. So obviously I'm banking on Damian to be the starter and to be the guy that leads this backfield again. I have no choice, obviously. I don't really have Howard. I don't really have Lindsey, who I traded. I don't have Fournette, who I acquired. So I kind of have to roll with Damian at this point. But I'm hoping that he can kind of regain his form from last year. And the biggest thing for me is this game is one of those games, a lot of the time it's kind of rare to see, I feel, that once the 4 o'clock games are done, this game is done. No one has anybody on Monday. No one has anybody on Sunday night. Like, 4 o'clock games close it out, and Tori has her big boys in Rodgers and Devontae, Packers defense and Crosby going all at 4 o'clock. And me, I have big boys too with McCaffrey at 4, Kupp at 4, and the Panthers defense at 4. I got Jack Doyle, who can kind of be a dark horse there at 4. So 1 o'clock will set the tone for sure, as she has 2 running backs, a receiver, tight end, and another receiver in her flex. I have a running back, a receiver, kicker, and quarterback. But like that
is the Mike Williams 6.5 points going to hurt you in the end? That's the question, because that went from you winning the matchup based on projections to now projected to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really expect a whole lot from Mike Williams. I knew his matchup was going to be good. He's been kind of averaging around 7-6 points every week. So it's more so a product of that offense too. I mean, I'm not going to get into it for just sit here in the long answer for you, but that offense in its own right, Phillip Rivers didn't look good. Therefore, the receivers don't look good, and at that point, what can you really do? Out of the flex, I wouldn't say it's an awful number. I mean, obviously, you can match John Brown very easily, who kind of is in the same range of he's going to get 16, 20 points if he scores. If he doesn't score, he's going to get probably 6. So at that point, who knows who's to say what they do over there in Cleveland. But I don't think I'm obviously completely out of it. The projections say I'm going to lose by 2. The game's still very close. It's going to be fun, though. It's going to ride a lot on that Packers-Panthers game, but hopefully I can pull out a dub in both ways.
That's the thing. Both teams are a game out of the playoffs at 3 and 6. I mean, that's the type of parity we've had in the league this year. Tori is a game out. Could you really use a win here? You're a game out. And, even more so for you, since as you mentioned at the top of the show, that you're the 4th highest scoring team in the league, there's going to be a little bit of you that feel like you've been shafted throughout the year, and you definitely don't want to keep that losing streak going. Next game up, and the last game, is probably in terms of record-wise, the best matchup of the week. But could we argue this game has the absolute least amount of playoff implications? I mean, I'm not saying, Kyle's not guaranteed in yet. Dana is. Dana has clinched the division already at 9-0. Kyle is 6-3, and by no means is he in yet, but his roster I feel like is good enough to the point in that division he will get one of those 3 spots. And as crazy as it sounds, the 6-3, 9-0 matchup here is kind of the one that has the least amount of implications on the league. Am I wrong?
No. I mean, obviously, Dana takes a loss here for whatever reason. It puts a blemish on the record, yeah, but I feel like more so this is kind of a game that
isn't going to change much.
It won't change much, but it's more so a game where I guess it's more so labeled as a developmental stage, or they're trying to scout out what's going to happen, because you can see here with Dana, with Chubb, how do they handle Chubb and how do they handle Kareem Hunt's kind of load that could change drastically for Dana if Chubb becomes a guy who splits carries. I doubt it happens, but if Chubb becomes someone who splits carries with Kareem,
it could.
It hinders just to keep him fresh for next year or whatever. I mean, like, you don't have. I mean, you could still make the playoffs depending on what happens moving forward. Obviously, it's still somewhat early, so you have a shot, but you very well could just kind of want to keep Chubb fresh. Like, he's been a workhorse all year long, and do you really want to, kind of waste the talent you have in Kareem by not playing him?
The record they have?
Yeah, probably not, right? So it all comes down to that. I mean, it's just more so Dana's guys are going to kind of see their roles potentially change depending on how long Stafford's out for. Galladay could be taking a hit value-wise right there, which kind of hinders Dana's team. Obviously doesn't hurt it a lot. He's got the wide receiver depth there. It's more so the running backs. I mean, if you get less touches from Chubb and you have to turn to somebody else, you really only have Jamal and Ingram. Ingram obviously a solid play, but your team doesn't look the same after that. And this game kind of doesn't really matter. Obviously, more so pride than anything else, but landscape-wise, won't change a lot depending on.
I mean, obviously, yeah, he's going to try to keep the winning streak going. I think it'd be cool if someone could try to run the table. We'll see what happens. Kyle's doing the whole no kicker thing. He'll pick one up if he feels like it's going to determine the matchup or not. So he's got a little bit of a bigger bench. T.Y. Hilton being out, obviously, is kind of a big dig on him. That could have made this matchup a little bit more intriguing. Darren Waller only got him 5.5, so that kind of put him on in a tough one as well. Here's the thing. I still think Nick Chubb's going to be around 15 carries a game, but he's had on average 20, 23 carries a game. The Browns are not going to be in the playoffs. That's for certain. Do they want to run their second-year running back into the absolute ground in meaningless games? Or do they kind of want to spread the load and see, okay, is Kareem Hunt possibly a guy that we could re-sign and kind of have a nasty duo running back tandem in the future? Because that is something to look out for, and that's something I've been saying for weeks with Dana, and I think that's why he tried trading Chubb in the middle of the year, was because, yes, Chubb's still going to eat, but is he going to get 23 carries a game, or is he now going to get 16? And that is a big difference. I mean, 15, 16 carries a game in today's NFL is still pretty significant, but you're taking 7-8 touches a game away from Chubb possibly. Is that going to happen? We will see. It might not. But it's something to look out for, and I think it's something that I'm going to keep a close eye on these next few weeks, especially since he did not trade Chubb before the deadline. So something to look out for sure. But overall, playoff-wise, meaningfulness of it all, this game really does not have a huge impact on the playoff race. Dana not only has wrapped up a playoff spot, he's literally wrapped up the division. So he's got a bye already. So that's what's crazy about all this. But overall, that was the matchups for this week. It'll be a fun one. The trade deadline is now 2.5 hours away. We'll see if anything else pops up before then. If not, these are the teams that are going to be, the teams heading in forward in the playoff race. So it's going to be a fun one these last 4 weeks of the year, and I'm excited to kind of see how this all pans out. Every team through 9 weeks is still in it, and it's not like they're in it like they're down 3 games with 3 to go. You're technically still in it, right? No, every team is within 1 game of the playoffs, whether you're team 12 or team 6. It is absolutely crazy how closely linked every team is. Any last thoughts before we wrap up, Krim?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can bring up something. I don't know how well we really know rosters, but looking at all the teams, as obviously we all have a shot at making the playoffs, if you had to say that one team needs to make a move who kind of needs to make one before the deadline today?
Oh, that is a tough question. Looking at everything, I would argue, obviously, it's going to be a team that's kind of on the fringe here that kind of needs to kind of get a little spice up. I would argue your brother could possibly make a move, whether packaging a Duke Johnson and a Sammy Watkins for someone kind of like a receiver of some sorts. I think that's something to look at. I also think it's tough. Because Peter doesn't have anything he can really move. I think Tyler could possibly make his team a little bit better at the receiver position. I know he's got Edelman and McLaurin on a bye. He's got Robinson. He's got decent receivers, but he's also got a lot of guys on his bench he could have maybe moved around and shuffled around a little bit. I like his running backs moving forward, but it really is tough. I don't know. What would you say?
I'd say Tyler too. I mean, where you're at now, you're still, in the hunt. Right now, I believe he's tied with Rob. So
Yeah.
you're essentially locked in there with Rob. Your team is one of the lower scoring teams in the league. I think he's like second lowest or something like third lowest, something like that. So in the bottom half for sure.
Yeah, third.
I know he said he's Zeke's on the block. Making a move like that can kind of garner you the depth that you kind of need moving forward. Because if you can get what you need out of Darius guys coming out of the bye, if they're in evaluation mode, they play guys more than AP. You're getting a starting running back at a
Yeah,
guys
that's big.
there, right? So you can trade Zeke for a downgrade at running back, but also upgrade at receiver because your receiver, like you said, the receivers kind of are weaker with McLaurin, with Edelman out. You kind of see that with Amendola being a guy he has to go to, who wouldn't have been bad had Stafford been in, but Stafford being out really hurts all the value in Detroit for receivers. And Marquise Brown, who's been kind of hit or miss all year long, I mean, that guy is either boom or bust. He's kind of the epitome of that, where he's going to get you a slant, run it 70 yards and score, or get you a slant and get you 3 yards, and then he's kind of down and out. But
Sure.
I do feel like someone like Tyler could benefit more so because he's going up against, the Chads of the league, the Kyles, and especially Rob too with his roster. When it's healthy, it's pretty solid. It's just a
Right.
matter of he needs to kind of make sure you can kind of be on the same playing field as those guys if injuries
Yeah.
come or whatever.
Yeah, because it's hard to look because I like looking at the teams that are right on the fringe playoffs and need a little bit of an extra push that are a game out or right there, kind of tied. And it's tough because I feel like your team's fine. There's not much more you could do. You kind of just got to ride the ship. Dave's kind of dismantled and remantled and dismantled and remantled his team quite a bit. So it's a tough question, but with only 4 weeks left on the season, it's going to be an interesting finish for certain. So. Next week we might possibly, depending on if we can get him in here or not. Kyle's been itching to get on here, and we'll see if he can kind of get on and give his thoughts on the face or on how the league's going so far, and kind of get an extra voice or opinion in here on that. Because after next week, there's no trades, right? So we will basically just be looking at matchups, and that's it. So to kind of get that extra voice in here and kind of give his thoughts on who he looks at as good teams or who he thinks can do this or that will be kind of a fun little thing. So we'll see if we can get that going for you guys next week. But other than that, anything else, Krim?
No, that's it.
All right. So everyone, good luck on week number 10 of the fantasy season. Crazy to say we're that far already, but down to the last month of the regular season. Have fun, everybody. Enjoy the football Sunday and take care.